One criticism of charter schools that have great test scores is that while traditional public schools must take every student, charters cherry pick the best students. Dr. Ramona Eatlin, the executive director of the Washington, D.C. Association of Chartered Public Schools, is having none of that.
You know, trading in urban myths is really not appropriate, and that is not true. The Office of the State Superintendent of Education finally has data. We finally have a longitudinal data tracking system that can provide the numbers, and that is not true. It's been perpetrated as an urban legend for at least a decade, and it's just not true. Moreover, 75%.
She said it was not true, the idea of cherry picking.
About the cherry picking, yeah. 75% of all the children going to public schools in DCPS are not going to their neighborhood school. That means that 75% of the parents are choosing an out-of-boundary school or a charter school for their students. These are the same poor, low-income families. You want to say they don't know what they're doing when they choose a charter school, but that's just 45% of them. The rest of them are choosing another DCPS school, sometimes coming across the river, taking 3 and 4 buses to get their children somewhere that makes some sense.
Jordy?
So the question isn't should you have choice, but rather what are the choices that should be available? What's the array of choices that should be available? So yes, charter schools are going to exist, private schools are going to exist, Catholic schools and other kinds of religious-based schools are going to exist. There are going to be any number of choices that will populate what essentially is the marketplace of ideas about public education. For me, the question becomes, what then should there be in those choices that would make them equitable?
Well,
so hold on, man. Hold on. Now listen.
Give us a definition.
Right?
Go ahead.
No. Hold on. Because the only way you get out of this Gordian knot is to stop arguing against the proliferation of something that already exists. I'm not saying that charter schools are not, that you don't have great charter schools. I'm sure that yours and lots of other ones are. But there are also a fair distribution of poor charter schools, poorly run charter schools, poorly run management companies over charter schools, in the same way as that has been true in the population of quote unquote regular public schools or traditional public schools. So all I'm saying to you is, listen, we can stand here all day and I can argue about the public education system, which I dearly love and support, and you can argue for yours. But the fact of the matter is, there are 3 elements that in your schools, I want true in my school. 1, you're talking about children. 1, I want high expectations for my kids. Absolutely. And I want that in the hands of a teacher and a principal and a parent. 2nd, I want there to be a diverse way into that child's human mind. A multiple set of ways by which you can approach how that young person will learn. Now that's going to mean technology. It's going to have some implications for the facilities. It's going to have some implications for the utility of technology and a whole host of other resources that a teacher should have at his or her disposal. And 3rd, there really needs to be a caring, loving environment. And every single place where I've ever been and seen those 3 things operating in a dynamic, in a classroom and in a school, I've seen high performance. And I'm saying to you, it's in private schools, it's in public schools, it's in charter schools, it's in a whole host of schools. It's just simply not enough for us to feel that it's equitably distributed.
Steve? And then I'm going to some of our other panelists. Steve?
So to one of your points, you mentioned that there is choice. When 150,000 children in Texas are on waiting lists, when 20,000 children in DC are on waiting lists, when almost 100,000 children in New York City are on waiting lists at all. We keep going throughout the country. Just for charter schools, that's just charter schools as an option. Sure. Then there really isn't choice for everyone, because there's a significant number of folks who don't gain access to choice. We are running a system in America that was founded in 1635 with the same DNA and expectations that was meant to keep black people enslaved. And so as a result of sending children to school by virtue of where they can afford to live, we are further deepening the segregation such that we can almost ensure yet another generation will be lost while we put forward a moratorium, while we talk about we support all types of schools. I can say I am not a charter school advocate. I'm a good school advocate. And as quickly as I say that, I'm saying that when the people have spoken, then we need to listen to the people, not the talking heads. We need to stop talking in esoteric terms and talk practically. If we have 20,000 children here in Washington, D.C. who want access to a charter school, they are voting members of the public. Give them access. Provide the opportunity. We need to stop putting our own professional interests first, because I find it interesting to hear an individual defending, on the one hand, a failed school system while suggesting that individual or obscure examples of charter schools that have fallen short stand as the rule when the data doesn't support it. The fact is that if folks on this stage were genuinely concerned about quality, then some of the schools that they are receiving dues from the teachers forcibly from, they'd be first in line to shut down. But since they're not, they have to come up with some rationale to keep those buildings afloat. And so they talk about public education. Well, public education ultimately is determined by the public itself. The public is the parent, not an elected official, not a special interest group who wants to maintain its power. It's a parent who wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to do all I can to provide my child with the quality of education that I believe that they deserve. I shouldn't have to win a lottery. I shouldn't have to lie about my address. And I shouldn't have to pay more money than I have to afford.
I want to go to Joe, and I want to ask you about that, because we heard the case of the woman in Ohio who literally was threatened with jail, had to get a pardon from the governor because she used her dad's address. Her dad ended up getting arrested and actually died in jail. And when I interviewed her, it was still stunning to her. We have black parents who are saying, I cannot live in this environment. And we're having this battle. And when we asked those parents, they said, look, all I'm concerned about is whether my kids going to the 3rd, to the 4th, to the 5th, to the 6th, to 7th, whether they actually graduate. Joe, speak to that.
The individual in Ohio was trapped in a situation where the educational process has literally stalled. There was no outlet. Just as Brown versus Board of Education for the time was successful, but it was also very limited and restricted because the one elusive element that was not a part of it was social equity. The social equity is the real question in the conversation that we need to wrap our heads around.
Kickstart your day at 7 and get the news you need from the perspective you want. NewsOne Now with Roland Martin, every weekday morning at 7 on TV1.